God's story, your life. Unfolding short stories.
Hi, I'm Kristy Heilman, and I think when I look back at my life, I'm able to see so many things that God has done and orchestrated in every moment of my life. But this story in particular is one, it was life-altering for us as a family, for my husband and I, for our kids, and it's something we could have never known ahead of time. It was all God. So my husband and I got married in 2004. We had been living in Oklahoma. We both had jobs there, and we're starting to look for houses to buy, to settle in. We were going to start a family at some point. You know, we wanted to get going on our life, essentially. But we were a couple of weeks into looking for houses, and I started to have this little voice inside saying, this isn't what we're supposed to do. We're not supposed to buy a house here. We're not supposed to live here. This isn't where we're supposed to go. And I start having this, and I'm praying about it and saying, God, what is this? And just feeling very, very clearly, God, tell me, you are supposed to move. This isn't the place. You need to move to Iowa. We're in Oklahoma. Now, my husband is from Iowa. So, at first I thought, maybe it's because, he's got family and all here and some connections here and that sort of thing. But it wasn't completely that. I just knew God was saying, we're supposed to go to Iowa. Now, we've only been married a few weeks, a few months at this point. I was really nervous to go talk to my husband about this. This is a big thing to come at somebody with, say, hey, yeah, I know we just got married and we're looking to buy a house, but I think we're actually supposed to move to a different state. It was a little overwhelming. And I think it was actually Josh, my husband, that came to me first, who had more courage than I did to say, hey, can we talk? I know we're looking for a house, but I think we're supposed to go somewhere else, that we're supposed to move to Iowa. Turns out my husband was having this same sort of feeling, same situation happening for him, that God was telling him we're supposed to move to Iowa. I just remember feeling shocked, completely floored when we talked about this, to realize that each of us individually had been told by God and felt very clearly we were being told by God that we were supposed to move somewhere else. And then both of us being nervous about talking to the other one about it. So when we did finally talk and found out that this was happening, it was just an immediate, all right, let's go. Let's do it. Now, it was overwhelming and daunting, but at the same time, in those moments, it was so clear to both of us that it was God saying go. So we both went, let's go. So we started the process of looking into, okay, where could we live? Where would we get a job? Because, we're young and we've just been getting going in our careers. And it was one thing after another falling into place. We absolutely had jobs before we ever left Oklahoma. We had jobs waiting for us when we came. We had a place to stay for those first few months while we looked for an apartment, and we were off and running. And I thought that was the blessing. I didn't even think past that point because I am human and small-minded sometimes. It was years later that I found out and was blown away by the fact that there was more to come from that first step of obedience, of moving from one state to another. We had gotten married and moved in that same year of 2004 to Iowa. Fast forward to 2008, and we were pregnant with our second child, and we had gone to our ultrasound. And after the ultrasound, I got a phone call to tell me that they'd seen something on the ultrasound, that they saw that our baby had clubfoot. I had images in my head, but I was just like, I don't know what this means. What does this mean? But my husband, being the amazing person he is very good at researching things. And he immediately went into research mode. He started researching what clubfoot is, what that means, where you're supposed to take your child for treatment, all of these kind of things. So first off, we found out what clubfoot is. And it means that a child's feet, it can be one, it can be both, are turned in the wrong direction, essentially. Our son, they saw, had bilateral clubfoot, which for Austin meant both of his feet were turned inward. So So his feet were turned completely, almost a 90-degree angle, toes pointing towards each other. So the bottom of his legs and his feet all turned in. And so we found out that that's what that was. Then, of course, my husband goes into, okay, what do we do? And as he researched, he found out the leading place in not just the country, but the leading place in the world for treatment of clubfoot is in Iowa. It's in Iowa City at the University of Iowa Hospital. It's literally an hour and a half from our doorstep. And not only is it the leading place, but it is because there has been this revolutionary work done by a man named Dr. Ponseti. And he created something called the Ponseti method. And clubfoot is something that affects children around the world, and in other countries, it can be absolutely devastating because they don't have access to healthcare or to treatment. Before Dr. Ponseti's method, it had been a surgical treatment, which can work, but it also had a higher rate of relapse or of pain. Dr. Ponseti developed a method that was all about using casts and braces and no surgery. And it had an extremely low percentage of relapse. And so people were coming from around the world to get treatment. So when we found out that this place was literally down the road from us, I can't explain the feeling well enough that my husband and I had, and saying that it was a wow God moment is about as close as I can get. We were just shocked, overwhelmed with the feeling of, look what God did. We didn't even know this would be something we needed to deal with or think about. How could we have known? We couldn't, but God did. And that one step of obedience and saying yes to God on moving from one state to another, we couldn't see all of the outcome of that, what that would lead to, but God did. And being able to trust him and obey and say yes and go when he told us to go meant we were in the perfect spot for our son to get the best treatment in the world. And I remember taking him at 2 weeks old for his first set of casts. It was overwhelming to watch them put the first set of casts on, but the feeling I will never forget is them handing me my son, my tiny baby, 2 weeks old, plaster casts on all the way up to his hips. And I remember thinking, what am I going to do? But God was there with me. He never left me. And I knew that we would make it through. We would get to the other side because God had already shown again and again and again his faithfulness. Austin is 15 years old now. He can run and walk and dance with the best of them. You would never, ever know that he was born with bilateral clubfoot. Our God, he loves my son more than I ever could and was planning for him and for his life before he was ever born. And I just can't help but say, wow, God.
The Unfolding is a Wow God production, a ministry of the University of Northwestern St. Paul. Discover more at wowgod.com.